On Toby's old railway, Toby had worked on an old harbour, but back then it wasn't old but new. He had also worked alongside one of his siblings. One of them in particular was Roger. Soon he spoke up. "So, how's work, Toby?" "Oh, it's alright," said Toby. "I did not know this, but I actually worked alongside some narrow gauge engines." "Oh, really?" said Toby. "Yes," said Roger. "There's this one engine in particular whose backstory is kind of creepy, but he kind of and didn't really deserve his fate. And who could that be? I've heard about this engine named Sir Handel on the island of Sodor, and some of his siblings. This one in particular was very rude. His name was Hampton. It's kind of like Hampton, but you put the P before the ton. It's a very devious engine indeed. I remember him very well. He looked identical to his brother Sir Handel. His personality wasn't identical to him. He was rough, ruthless, would always crash all the time." "Oh my," said Toby. "We're only a week until Christmas, yet you're talking about a story this dark?" "Well, it doesn't matter what time of year it is. Halloween, Christmas, it doesn't matter. We can still technically talk about spooky stories and stuff." Anyway, back to the story. All started a year after we were all built. Hampton would always cause accidents on the rails. One time he had derailed off the tracks and derailed his train. And obviously he didn't seem to care. He didn't really care one bit about the accidents, and would always keep doing them. But one day, that would all change. As one day, Hampton was puffing along the rails to get his train. He was going a little bit too fast on the rails. Up ahead was a bent track. This was during the summer, so the rails had been bent due to the heat. And Hampton didn't know what was about to happen next. Suddenly, his driver and fireman felt a jerk on the rails. They were going so fast that they crashed off the bent rails. They fell down from the cliff and it all happened. Hampton had crashed off the hill. He had hit a rock that made his fall even worse. There was no near brake vans to help out, so by the time one had came, it was already too late to save Hampton, as Hampton's body started to rot and rust. Meanwhile, I was tasked to go into the mines and collect mine trolleys of rocks. Mines were big enough so train engines like us would fit. This was a mine for narrow gauge and standard gauge engines too. So underneath my wheels were also narrow gauge tracks. But as I was puffing through the tunnel, I passed by a little hole, or what seemed to be a tunnel. "Roger, stop." That's what I think my driver said. "Puff back," he said. So I listened to my driver and puffed back to the tunnel. He looked at it a bit more, and what I saw was horrifying. Inside a tunnel was a ghost engine, an engine with no wheels at all. It seemed to have a light on it that shone like an eye. But then I realized the basis of this engine, it looked just like Hampton. That's when I realized it was Hampton. The same engine that had crashed off a cliff. An engine that we waited too late to save. But then suddenly, it looked like Hampton, or Hampton's ghost, was charging at us. The ghost wasn't moving too fast, but fast enough for us to know it was charging at us. So, what did me and my driver do? Coal turned into flames in my firebox as we puffed away as fast as we could. But every hole or tunnel I saw in the cave, Hampton was always there. Either way, I soon enough got out of there, with the mine trolleys that were full of rocks. Oh, me and my driver still remember that engine. As I was puffing out of the mines, I noticed something. Outside of the quarry was Hampton's crash site, but with none of Hampton's scrapped remains. I thought they had just scrapped or moved his remains. But after asking you, Toby, and other tram engines or other standard gauge engines or narrow gauge engines, I found out they weren't even moved. Me and my driver found out that Hampton was probably still alive in those mines. Next to his crash site was a picture still intact. Hampton's driver had probably kept this. Shatters of glass seemed to be near it. There was probably a picture frame hanging somewhere in Hampton's cab. The picture had both Hampton and a unfamiliar narrow gauge engine next to them. We soon found out that this engine was Hazel, an engine who was the same class as Hampton, and then another engine who was unknown. We decided to take that picture as evidence, and now that picture hangs up in our controller's office. Now, since we're away from that railway, we kind of forgot about Hampton until now. But we all know that somewhere on Wales, in those mines, Hampton's still in there, haunting and roaming the mines. That's why you shouldn't go dilly-daddling in the mines. Else you'll end like, Hampton. Wow, that was dark, said Toby. It sure was. I just found that out by the time I left that railway. It is such a shame that he had tragically died, but then again, he kinda deserves it for his ruthless behavior. At least he's somewhere safe now. Couldn't you agree?